who loves the user experience of entering data into a CRM, right? So like that's the old world of SaaS. The new world of AI is like, how do we make this as easy as possible for someone to easily engage and create these really cool things like an AI app from
company these days is prompts. So what are some of the things, like modern prompting is very different from what we were doing a year ago. It completely changed. So what are some of the things and some of the trends you're seeing in prompting that are improving your
already existing based on a deep research flow in Mind Studio. So it goes through this whole process to make sure that I can do some work and make sure I can enable my team that I couldn't do before because I would have had to manually listen to the call, figure out who the competitor is.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of What About AI Agents. Today with us we have Jonathan Kvarfordt, who is the head of GTM Growth at Momentum.io. He's also the founder of GoToMarketAI Academy, that basically teaches people real business impacts using AI. He is an expert, a podcast host. He does a lot of things AI related. So, Jonathan, I would love to hear you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, because that's what excites me.
Thank you for letting me be here. Honored as usual. Appreciate it. Again, I'm jealous of your background more than mine because mine's boring and yours is beautiful. So good for you. And and you did a pretty good job saying my last name. So I appreciate the attempt. So thank you for that. My name is Jonathan Kvarfordt. My nickname is Coach that people call me. I haven't taken your normal journey into AI space like I guess you could say probably most people. I've been in sales and what's called enablement or RevOps for the last 10 years. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I was introduced to AI from a guy who bought his own technology. I'm sorry, who built his own technology. And he taught me a lot about AI, but I was the one who had to translate what his AI tech did to the customers and to the users. If I can ask, it's really loud on your side. I don't know if it's like noisy or something, but it's really super loud.
Let me see if I can turn that. Is that better? Is this better?
Much better. Thank you. Anyway, so I got some tutelage from this guy who had his own AI tech. I had to take that and then give it to the customers and team members. And then about that same time, so I worked with him for a year or so. And then later on, then OpenAI released ChatGPT in the fall. He was on the team giving feedback on GPT-1, GPT-2, etc. And he told me about it. So I went and signed up with the other 35 bajillion people who signed up for ChatGPT. And then started playing with it and realized that people weren't using it to the full power they could have been. And so I launched the GTM AI Academy 2.5 years ago. And since then, I've had several thousand people go through the academy. I teach at Bryant University. I consult 10 different companies. I am at an AI company itself. I do the prompting for our own internal agents and for agents we use for other customers. So I'm very, very deep in the space and love to teach it, speak it, breathe it all day long.
That's incredible, Jonathan. And I think our listeners would really, really love to hear your insights, especially about going to market these days with AI. It's a hyper competitive space, right? So even 2 years ago, it was a toy. People didn't trust it. Then, like a year ago, businesses got a mandate. Everybody had to implement AI. They started to do this AI pilots. Now they have a bunch of those AI POCs with like really poorly tuned prompts running. But this is just the beginning. How does a company? How does one start? How does one start to go to market and to get in front of buyers? Because it's such a hyper competitive space.
I wish I had the magic answer for that because there's so many answers. It's a really interesting question. Sorry about that. I think when you see companies like Lovable, Cursor, Cluely, GenSpark, all these different companies who are going with small teams of 30 people or under, and they're launching and they hit $30 million within 6 months of launching, it's crazy. So there is a viral network effect you have to have. Because I know of a lot of other technologies that have just as good technology that has not gone that far, So I think it comes down to what is the user experience like in the technology itself? Is it positive? Is it good? Because one thing I do notice with the teams that launch like crazy versus ones that don't is that the user experience is much more intuitive and simple and easy, and the people have thought through like what is the user going through with AI that is like ChatGPT or like any other AI platform, but better because it's applied to a specific use case. And then that mechanism becomes the wheelhouse where people go, I love this tool. So when someone else says, hey, what's the tool you use for this thing? They say, hey, I use Lovable, or hey, I use Cursor, or hey, I use whatever the case might be. So user experience, I think, is not that it hasn't been important, but it's more important more than ever. Because when you think about classic tools like a CRM, for example, there's no person in the world who loves the user experience of entering data into a CRM, right? So like that's the old world of SaaS. The new world of AI is like, how do we make this as easy as possible for someone to easily engage and create these really cool things like an AI app from Cursor from nothing? It's just crazy what you can do now. And that's the world we're living in, is how can you use natural language, a really easy mechanism to just describe something simple and then create something awesome based on a very easy prompt. Like I'm a crazy prompt nerd engineer. I'm very critical of my prompts, but the AI tech's getting so good that you can do a mediocre prompt and get a good result. It's just, which is cool because it means for the normal person, it makes it much easier and much more fun to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think Lovable figured out that like if you give somebody a really, really good result based on mediocre prompt, even though it's not a perfect result, and then you ask people to pay, they will pay you. Like because Cursor had a very different, I think, network effect from Lovable, where in Cursor, you had to the developers they told to each other about Cursor, but then they fell in love with Windsurf, they fell in love with Cursor, they fell in love with code, and then they hate it, they love it, they hate it. But Lovable seems to have tapped into that no code market, and they gave a really, to your point, a really, really, really good onboarding experience, where a no code person could get a result really fast, and then they just got them to pay. So how do we structure this viral loops? Like what are some of the best practices on building this viral loops, especially in this day and age, for smaller SaaS founders who are not as experienced or
I think it's really understanding more than ever your ICP, or meaning your key personas that you're going after. Because like when you listen to the YC Combinator or any of the podcasts with like investment groups, that kind of thing, they're talking about the more vertical based applications, because then the it's not just a general pain that you're solving for. It's a very specific problem that a very specific persona is experiencing. That the better and deeper you can get into that world, the more applicable it is to your use case. Like, for example, if I had to go help a tractor seller in Oklahoma, that's different than what I would do for a SaaS seller in San Francisco. It's just a different thing. So that workflow that the tractor seller would go through, I'd want to build an application that would fit tractor sellers across the Midwest. So it makes sense. It's that kind of personalization that has to be aware of, and then into what's the word? Improve that as much as you can, so you innovate on top of it and make it again the user experience at key point, so it's deep for that one place. That's number one. Because once you do that, like Cursor, you said Cursor is a good example. They're not for everybody. I don't use like I've used Cursor because I'm an AI nerd, but my tool of choice is Lovable. It's not Cursor, even though I've used both. But I'm also not a developer, so I'm not. That's not my wheelhouse. So when you have a deep vertically based thing, the network effect can be much easier, because then you're saying, "Hey, other tractor sellers, this is a freaking cool tractor selling AI tool." It's way easier to go down that path because all of the friction is gone because it's all customized for that one person. Makes sense? That's number one. Is like, how well do you know your key personas? What is not only the pain, but the main problems that you're solving for, and how well does your technology solve for that? And I would shout that from the rooftops. One other thing, too, is that I would suggest that people who have technology, right now, people are sick and tired of hearing about theological or theoretical use cases. They want to know what is actually happening. Don't tell me theoretically what AI could do. Tell me what AI is doing. And the better you're able to show that with your technology, the better you will do, because people will thrive on saying, that's awesome. I know you could do that use case with this thing for my persona, with this tech. They'll come at you like crazy, you know?
so basically interview a bunch of people, verticalize as much as possible, tune the prompt, and basically and get it in front of these people in wherever media that they consume. Basically, it's the same thing we were doing with vertical SaaS, but now we are just trying to sell the agents. To your point, how can we be specific? Because like we look at this Windsurf, we look at Cursor, we look at Lovable. They are very horizontal, right? And they did really really well horizontally, but everybody's saying vertical. So
Yes.
it's kind of a contradictory advice in a sense.
Well, I guess it depends, because like there's two worlds happening right now. Like for example, GenSpark is a very general based tool. So there's this frenzy in the AI world. Like I'm an AI crazy person, and there's a lot of people like me who may not be as advanced in prompting, but there are people who are curious and they're interested and they want to know about AI technology. So Mattis comes out, they go crazy. GenSpark comes out, they go crazy. So it's like there's this general purpose use case that I think is going to be incredibly competitive, and you'll have to have a really good technology to stand out in that very competitive space. In a vertical space, like for example, the reason why I think you should go vertical is because like if someone has experience as a chiropractor, as an example, and there's like no AI tech in that world. If it is, it's very little. So if you can become one of the first or better technologies in AI tech for chiropractors, there's not a lot of competition. There's a lot of blue ocean in verticalized, specialized places. In the AI space itself as a whole, it is incredibly competitive. You got to have a freaking kick-ass tool to stand out. Does that make sense, hopefully?
Yeah, and lots of money. Yeah, to your point, you want to go horizontal, you better have raised the huge amounts of money to be able to do that properly. Because if you want influencers to pick you up, like the horizontal influencers, they've seen everything, so you have to like really give them a good experience. But if you go vertical and you go to people who nobody goes to, you go to funeral homes and you deliver to them a solution, they'll be like, "Well,
Right.
we want that." Like, 'cause who's serving them? And that's where you make money, I guess, to
Right.
your point, versus like
Exactly.
people just pumping billions into you and selling you or whatever. It's not the same. Interesting. So, what are some of the go-to-market strategies that you could advise on for people trying to sell this agent? So, I verticalized an agent. I built an agent, let's say for for like for midwestern construction companies. How do I take it to them? How do I introduce it to them? What do I do?
Are we talking for a small business? Are you talking for anyone are you talking for someone who's bootstrapping, no budget whatsoever? Good question. So this goes back to more of kind of a marketing point of view personally. So it's thinking, again, who's the persona? What's their problems they're experiencing? What's their pains? What's the issues they're having? Where does that persona hang out? Does that make sense? It could be hang out online. It could be hang out in person. It doesn't matter. Where do they hang out? You almost have to become a part of that world. Like there's this classic story back in the day about Salesforce. When they first launched, one of their most successful sales reps was trying to sell into insurance. He was so dedicated, he went and got his 3 licenses in insurance just so he could speak to it, created a solution using Salesforce for that same thing, and he sold the largest 8-figure deal of Salesforce's history because of it. It took him a year to get there, but he dedicated himself so much to that cause. They had the biggest deal in history because he dove deep into that one vertical. Does that make sense? It's a very micro version, but that could happen. And now the speed of which you're able to do that is even faster than it was in the past because you have all this information available to you. So the first question is, where's the persona? How well do you know them? Where do they hang out? And then you can start getting their attention. Because once you know you have a use case that they have a problem with solving, then you go to the Tractor Salesman Expo of Oklahoma. It'll be very easy to have that conversation. And even if you have to buy a booth for $1,000, you'll have your key ICP, your personas right there in front of you. It'll be nice and easy to do it. So it just depends on what you have access to. I always tell people with marketing, you have one of 3 things. You need time, you need network effect or distribution, or you need money. If you don't have money, you have time and distribution. If you don't have distribution, you have to have time, and you have to be patient. So it kind of like whittles down what options you have, but there's been a lot of people who've had a lot of good success by doing sometimes the hard work of going door to door to chiropractors and selling their AI tech. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say there's no other way to do it. There's lots of ways to do it. Now you could also do things like I would use clay. I would build a clay table, get all of my ICP personas, make sure I understand who's their titles, who's the people that hang out with, who are these people. You can automate things and do some reach outs. The problem with that is that it's because everyone else and their dog can do that. It's so incredibly noisy. It's really easy to be drowned in the noise, which is why, again, if you go verticalized, they're not getting hit on as much. So it's like, at least from an AI perspective. So as long as you bring that AI angle to a place that doesn't have it, there's lots of AI tech that can help you get there. But just know that even without AI, chiropractors, for example, funeral homes, they're all getting spammed like crazy from other technologies to try and sell them the same shit. It's just like you got to find a way to stand out, which is why you focus on the problem of the persona in your message. Does that make sense? It all focuses around what you're trying to solve for. That's what business is about.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And now let's talk a little bit about technology. You say you're a big prompt enthusiast, you're an expert in that. So a lot of what goes into AI company these days is prompts. So what are some of the things, like modern prompting is very different from what we were doing a year ago. It completely changed. So what are some of the things and some of the trends you're seeing in prompting that are improving your accuracy, your efficiency, like in a good way?
It depends. So like there's prompting you're doing inside of ChatGPT or doing deep research, and then there's prompting for like a multi-agent platform. It's just different, you know. So like in my view, because I'm a nerd. I don't know if I can say I'm an expert. I'm a nerd. I spend a lot of time on this, so I like to say I'm pretty good at it. But there's just a lot of things that have changed, but also a lot of things that have stayed the same. So like as example, when I with prompting as an example, I spent my life training humans of how to perform in sales orgs, right? So if I want to do that, the two key things that I need to have in order to do that is I need to teach someone the theory of what I'm trying to accomplish, like the sales methodology, and then I need to show them the application. So what's the theory? What's the context behind this? What are we trying to do? And then what does that look like in execution? How does someone actually do this? Now, whether that means I share a video of someone or whatever the case might be, I got to show them what that means. I can't tell you how well that same principle applies to prompting. It doesn't matter if I'm doing agent prompting or any other type of prompting. A lot of prompts that I see don't have good context. They don't have good theory. And then they don't have good execution or application or examples. So if you're trying to teach an AI what good looks like, what bad looks like, you need to have a slew of examples of how to get there, in via text or via whatever prompting style you use. So no matter what I'm working with, that principle has not changed in 2 years. Now there's little tactics that have changed, like from what I can or cannot use inside of a prompt, or if I'm using JSON in combination with regular words. Like there's all these little tactics that depend on what you're trying to accomplish. But overall, most people who prompt are prompting mediocre because they don't get the basic fundamental principles in place first to actually do some of the fun tactic stuff. Does that make sense, hopefully?
It makes total sense. Actually, I wanted to explore more about the JSON prompts because I know that
Yeah.
they are now like one of the new things, especially for video prompting. They do a lot of these JSON prompts that
Yeah.
provide this incredible video, like with incredible outputs. So, what are some of
Yeah.
the things that you are seeing? What are some of the amazing things that you've been seeing with that?
Yeah, I've been experimenting with different platforms, like all the text to video, text to audio, text to whatever things, and trying to experiment, seeing what works or not. And JSON's not always the answer, in my opinion. Like there's a lot of times where I'm not finding it be the right model to use. Sometimes it's HTML markdown style. Sometimes it's a regular text. Like sometimes it's a combo of both. So it just depends. But I do think that for specific applications, like you said, video, for whatever reason, the JSON type style prompting works really, really well. And if anyone's like, if it sounds intimidating, like for example, I'm not a coder. I don't know how to code JSON. I have no idea how to do this kind of stuff, but I've worked with it enough to know like what makes a good JSON code. But I use AI to make JSON prompts. Does that make sense? So it's like I'm meta prompting on JSON prompts to make sure it's performing the best way. And this is where prompt engineering comes in. You say, okay, let's try this prompt in English, convert it to JSON. Let's test it inside this video library. And then I can look at the JSON code and say, okay, how does my prompt that I usually use in English or HTML Markdown, how does that work inside of JSON? Is it getting me the result I want? Is it any better than just normal English? You know what I mean? Because again, the models are getting so good that even though theoretically you'd say JSON's better, the models are so good now that it doesn't, I'm not seeing a drastic 50% difference in quality. It's like maybe 5% difference. It's not like this huge amount. You know what I mean? It's not like it's any more accurate. It's not like any more better thing. It's just different. So I'm always looking for those prompting unlocks that unlocks like 30% improvement in quality, in accuracy, in whatever the case is. And JSON, depending on the application, does sometimes do that, but for the most part, it's not. It's little improvements. It's not big time improvements.
Especially considering that large language models don't really care if you use JSON, but I guess the way that you present and organize it, it gives it sometimes it does boost.
Yes.
It does boost, and it also depends on the LLM. If you send it to Claude or if you send it to the Gemini or whatever, I
Right.
guess some
Right.
some of them are trained. They are trained differently, and there is a subtle difference, and some of them are better for one thing, some of them are better for another thing, right? So
It's fascinating. That's the thing. But the model changes. Like literally, they're releasing new models. GPT-5 is coming out here in like 2 weeks or something. Like there's
yeah,
always a new model changing. So it's like it's hard to keep track of what works or doesn't work anymore. It's crazy.
they're they're moving fast, but like to my experience, they release a new model. It works incredible. Then 2 or 3 weeks, it goes into a slump. So I guess they don't like. I don't know what happens, but the
Hmm.
models they over time they like plateau. It was performing at incredible levels, and then like recently it went like brain dead. It went completely dumb, and there was like a huge
Yep.
backlash of people paying like $200 a month to an Anthropic, saying, "Why are you paying you this if your model has become stupid now?" And they don't
Right.
respond, but yeah, it's chaotic in a sense.
Yeah. I agree.
So coming back to your experience of best practices setting things up. So let's say they want to create those automation workflows that they sell to other companies, right? So they interview a bunch of people, they get a bunch of knowledge, and they have to create flows. Do they have to just use N8, or is there some other tools that you think are incredible that people should be leveraging to create those automations and workflows with AI?
Yeah, and NAN is a great solution. I do think on a scale of 10, it's on the upper level of being technical. So if you're not as technical as others could be, NAN could be a little bit too technical. Make is another great one. I kind of put it the same par as NAN, but they're both amazing platforms. Like they're doing an amazing job, especially since NAN got the MCP stuff in it. I'm loving it. It's awesome. For beginners, I usually tell them to go like to a Zapier. It's a lot more user friendly. You can do some pretty cool stuff with Zapier. There's another tool I use called MindStudio.ai, which is another. It's a little bit more advanced than Zapier, but it's not as intense as NAN. But it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more. NAN and Make and Zapier started as automation platforms. MindStudio started as an AI platform that added the integrations and automations. So like these come from different places. So there's a lot more flexibility that I have in MindStudio from an AI perspective that I don't have in NAN. But NAN has a lot more automation things that MindStudio doesn't have because it's naturally an automation platform. Does that make sense? So there's different use cases for different places. Hopefully that helps. But yeah.
Oh, it does.
Oh,
It
and
does help.
relevance. Relevance too. I'm a huge fan of relevance. Relevance AI is awesome from like a team building perspective. And then there's one that's for go-to-market specifically called Empler, EMPLER.ai. It's another really cool AI agent GTM platform, which would be another fun one to look into.
There's so many of them.
Yeah, there's a ton. There's a ton.
Yeah, good days to live in, but we never have time to look at everything. So,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
so how do you feel about
Yeah.
MCP? Like I use MCPs a bit when I write code, but I find them to, in many cases, they're slowing down my process. And unless I really, really, really need it, I would rather not like leverage an MCP for something these days. How is your
Yeah.
relationship with MCPs like?
I mean, I like it, but I get what you're saying. Like, it's not always the solution for everything. It's kind of like how AI is not. If you need an automation, AI is not your answer. Automation's your answer. So it's kind of like I'm more thinking about like how what which way I'm leveraging it. Like from a point of view of using MCP to analyze large amounts of data and using Claude as an example as the interface, but the connectors coming into it and the MCP communication is able to be tapped into from that lens. I love it. But to your point, it's not the answer for everything. It'll be interesting to see like how the agent to agent protocol happens and what the next iteration of MCP is going to be. And then there's this fascinating article I just read on there's RAG and then there's agentic RAG. So there's another version of RAG coming out that's different. So like I just feel like it's going to keep improving itself. And hopefully at some time when you have MCP and agentic RAG and A2A all talking together, it'll be a really cool world. The challenge I'm finding is that you're limited because not everyone has adopted MCP yet. So there's a lot of things you can't do because they don't have the technology yet. So I would suspect in a year, when more people have something like that, it'll be a really fun world because all these things will talk and communicate and be pretty fun.
Yeah, unless they hallucinate, and
Right,
then they can
right,
create a bunch of problems. But yeah, I mean,
right.
my main issue right now with the current gen models is still they hallucinate a lot, and if it goes down the dark path and it does some destructive actions. I think some person deleted their production database because they had an MCP hooked up to it, and Claude somehow deleted their prod. That was not fun.
Yeah,
I can imagine that
yeah,
not being something that. But I guess over time, will they build out safeguards and it will improve. To your point, tell me a little bit about how do you use AI at Momentum? Like how do you accelerate your growth? What kind of strategies and patterns are you using to be able to accelerate because Momentum is an automation platform in itself, right? It monitors how you do things, and then it opens Slack rooms, etc., and it helps you automate everything. To your point, how do you utilize it for your own go-to-market? How, like, what's some advanced use cases for this event-driven automations using agents?
Well, the momentum is a double-headed dragon. So the one side is the orchestration slash automation side of it, which is its own native technology. The other side is obviously tapping into the LLM models and using that to extract data from conversations. So the technology is very good at integrating into different tech stacks and then taking someone's conversation like what you or I are doing and slicing, dicing it up, cleaning it up, validating it, and then putting it into different systems of record, whether that's Slack or CRM. So the information you're getting is very clean, very pure, and trusted because we've gone through like an agentic layer. So there's this whole agentic workflow that happens in the background that makes sure the data is clean. Why I tell you that is because, like as an example, Salesforce, if you took all the unique types of field that a human could update, and I'm not meaning like a Salesforce admin with like a formula field, that kind of thing. I'm talking like a regular user, all the different types of fields that someone could fill in is like 38 or 40 different types of fields. Other automation platforms like NAN and Zapier and all these other ones, they can integrate and do things into like 4 or 5, maybe 10 of those fields. Momentum can do all of them. So with that being the case, that means that the data you get, there's a lot of processes that happen inside of business that don't trigger until the data inside of Salesforce is filled out. So like, let's just say a salesperson puts in a checkbox for a sales engineer. That can't be done by most tech. We can do that. So as soon as that happens and someone says in a conversation, I need a sales engineer, automatically clicks that button and it moves into a flow of things that happens inside of the Slack and Salesforce experience. So there's this whole agent workflow that happens with Momentum depending on the use case. Now, what I use it for that Momentum does not do, Momentum's not a Zapier, it's not an NAN, it's not meant to be, that's not what we're doing. So there's things like, for example, I have triggers that happen through the day where Momentum will listen to calls and hear like a competitor gets mentioned as an example. So that goes into a Slack channel. I then test out different agents. Let's just use Zapier as an example. It sends a note into a Slack room. My Zapier agent reads that note from Momentum with the transcript quote from that person saying, we're looking at this competitor. Here's my talk track. Here's the things I like. Here's what I don't like. Whatever context it is, it'll grab that from the actual call and then move that into a Zapier flow that either adds it to an existing competitor battle card or it pings me and says, hey, we don't have anything for this. I'm going to do some research on this to make sure we have information on this person and creates for me a battle card that's already existing based on a deep research flow in Mind Studio. So it goes through this whole process to make sure that I can do some work and make sure I can enable my team that I couldn't do before because I would have had to manually listen to the call, figure out who the competitor is, do some research on Google, which wouldn't have very good stuff. And even if I did, it would take me 3 hours to get half the result I could do with deep research. And then put that in there. It would take me all day to do that before with one competitor. And now I'm doing 10 competitors a day automatically, just popping out. And I'm never touching it, which is awesome. So that's one example of many, but all of that doesn't happen unless I have the core data from the conversation, which comes from Momentum. So Momentum becomes the fundamental foundational piece that all these automations happen off of that then work different ways.
So really, we're going to see a rise of these operational agents at the commercial scale coming soon, because that sounds
Yeah.
incredible, and that sounds like that sounds to me like something already like super useful and super relevant from our like go to market standpoint and Doctor, for example. So like
Yeah.
having the ability to analyze everything and build out these automations that solve huge problems, and some of these things go unnoticed at many companies, is incredibly
Right.
valuable.
Yeah.
That's
Well, it all comes down to like what I said before about what's the persona, me as a marketer. What's the problem? I have to update battle cards on 20 bajillion calls a day. So if I can make an AI tech stack that can solve this problem automatically, that's a product. Like I could literally make a product out of what I made. I'm not, but I could if I wanted to. So like there's all sorts of things like this that you have to think about. Again, who am I trying to solve for? What do I know the best? How do I deep dive into it? How do I make an AI agent platform? And then you can use NAN or make some sort of white label version. You can make a product right there. It's like there's so many opportunities. The challenge is though, is that it's, sorry to go back to the advice thing. It's like finding a problem big enough that you would solve it and pay for it. That's the only side, is like, who's going to pay for this? Because sometimes I feel like right now we're in the .com bubble of AI. Because I was working in the late 90s when .com came around. There's so many little .coms are everywhere, and they just crashed. And then the massive conglomerates that exist now erupted from that. So I feel like the same way with AI is that there's a lot of little AI applications. I think the biggest difference, though, is that back then it required coders who knew what the crap they were doing to build all this tech. So the limitation was more, because even though there's a lot of technologies out there, it's not even close to how much there is now, especially as more and more users use Lovable or Claude or whatever. And as the technology gets better, to where instead of me saying, hey, make me an ROI calculator, I can put it in a cursor and say, hey, make me a Salesforce. Like, I can make these advanced technologies with a prompt is crazy. So the difference, though, is this is why I think vertical is the place to go, because broad-based horizontal solutions, I don't know if it's going to be the case, because if you had the ability to have MCP as an example, let's just say theoretically, you had MCP connector through Claude, and that Claude instance had connections to all of my other sub-agents that did all the other stuff, and I could dictate them all through Claude or even through Slack. That's a cool world to be in. We're not there yet, but when that world does happen, that's a freaking kick-ass place to be. So the question is, what AI agent would you want to be that could connect via MCP, Claude, or whatever the case might be, that solves that very specific problem that you could then trigger based off of that whatever user's interface? Does that make sense, hopefully?
It makes a lot of sense. And, you're correct. Look at companies like Builder.ai going down because, and you're going to have companies like like Windsurf got sold to OpenAI, but they didn't get sold to OpenAI because Microsoft didn't want them, and then Google just bought the leadership team, and somebody else bought
Right.
Windsurf. And then you look at this whole thing, and it's like, what is happening out there? Like, it's the
It's
Wild
chaos.
West. It's the Wild West of it's the dot-com bubble all over again. And whoever puts the radio on the internet is gonna make all this money. You know what I mean? In a sense.
That's right, man.
Yeah.
It's really hard, though, to be fair. As a founder, I can't tell you how many ideas I've personally thought of to make a product out of, that either I went to market with it and didn't have, nothing happened, or somebody else launched it and I didn't have I didn't have, all I had was time. I didn't have resources or money to get it out there, and it got launched before I did. Like, it's such a difficult, it's an amazing time to be a founder, and it's really freaking hard to be a founder, because it's trying to find that one niche thing that you can do, which is why, again, vertical is the place to go, because there's not as many players in the vertical spaces. You know what I mean? Everyone has experience. Like, it doesn't matter if you're like a pizza delivery driver all your life. Like, that space really well. So what AI tech could you do for pizza delivery drivers that would actually make their lives better? You know what I mean?
Like, how can you solve a problem of that small group and become trusted by that small group? Because in the end of the day, you're gonna solve more edge cases for them. Because like everybody freaked out, OpenAI launched the agent. Okay, great. The agent, it somewhat does the job, but if something does, but it doesn't do the job super well for everything. It just generically does the job
Right.
pretty good, right? But that's not what
Right.
people want when they want excellence. To your point.
No. Yeah. Like, I can't take the OpenAI agent. I lost somebody. I'll hang out by myself.
Hello, Stanley. Can you still hear me, Stanley? Hello, hello. Can you hear me, Stanley? Are you there? Hello, hello. Close this. Try again. Hello, can you hear me now?
I can. You disappeared. You okay?
Yeah. I don't know what happened. I think it's Riverside or something that's causing problems.
No worries, man. No worries.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, you can take OpenAI agent and it'll do something, but it's not going to be excellent and perfect and handle all those use cases that like you would need at the professional level.
Yeah, and part of it's just the lack of integrations. Like, I don't know what the agent's going to look like in the future, where a year from now everybody has MCP or everybody has agent-to-agent protocol, and you can all hook it up through your backend of your OpenAI ChatGPT instance. Like, maybe you can, but like, for example, I can't use the ChatGPT agent inside of my calls and then automate that to my deep CRM instance, like my OneStream account. I can't do that, right? I can like log into my flights and do flights with my stuff, which is fine. But like, again, it's more personal level. The business type applications, there's the deep specific ones with the niche are not going to be solved by OpenAI. They're looking at the more, how do we get millions of users happy with an application, not how do we make sure we take care of the core 10,000 people. Like, if you had, here's the math real quick. If you had 10,000 users on a platform you made at $10 a month, that's 100,000 a month. That's $1.2 million a year. That's a decent living on just an AI tech that probably has a really good profit margin. You know what I mean? Like if I had like a $4 or $5 million thing with like 20,000 users, I'd be great. Like I don't have to have a Salesforce huge conglomerate company. I don't care. So
Yeah,
it
neither
just
do
kind
you
of
need
depends.
investors. Yeah, I mean, even if it's modest, like 400, $500,000 a year, for a small group of people, that's it's a very good amount of money that you could leverage, like to have a good life. To your point, it doesn't need to be such a huge market. It's not venture investable. No VC is going to fund you, but do you really want to play that game? Do you want to have a boss? Because yes, Lovable
Exactly.
raised $200 million, a $2 billion valuation, and somebody's going to buy them because that's. I mean, where are they going to go? Somebody's going to have to acquire them because the investors have to make money. So now you're at the mercy
Exactly.
of how these people decide to play this game. So, but yeah, to your point, the changes that are happening is incredible. So, where do you see this tech going? So, you mentioned a lot of agents talking to agents, like this really deep agentic MCPs that are doing their own thing. What are some other things that you see within the next year that like would be the like where does tech go? So, what's your vision?
Next year, it's a good question. I keep thinking around. Hope this concept will make sense. There's this concept I'm calling the VP of everything, more with business again, because like there's a lot of parts of what people do day to day in their tasks and job that could be automated to the point to where one human could do, like in the past used to be one did sales, one did marketing, one did this, one did that. Now you can have one human do 5 functions because of AI, you know? So first thing would be if AI is able to be used by anybody who can speak, either vocally or prompting, then the only thing that's unique is the person, not the AI, and how the AI gets applied. So I would tell people like double down on what you're good at or are passionate about, that you could use AI as an amplifier to get there or to make your uniqueness amplified. Does that make sense? Like thought leadership. Even if you have a small LinkedIn following or a small Twitter following or a small TikTok following, doesn't matter. It's like saying, how can you take what you have with what you build on right now and then double dive into it and use AI as a mechanism to help you amplify your own uniqueness? That's number one. Two is this world of the kind of the same concept from a different angle. I see a world where because of MCP or A2A, whatever the case might be, that instead of me having to be limited to one company and doing my thing at one company, I'll have an AI agent team that could plug into, literally because of MCP and other technologies, to 5 companies. So that I'm doing marketing, for example, for 5 companies because my team's doing all this stuff for me and then brings me back the feedback. So I'm still in the loop, but I'm doing the marketing power of 5 teams. Like I see that future. I don't know about a year, but in the future, that's definitely going to be a reality because that AI agent team is using my IP, my unique angle, my strength. Does that make sense? And so the more that I'm able to scale my brain via AI agents, the better, which means it's going to be probably a list of 25 agents doing different things using my IP in a way that only I can do it because it's my IP. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah, it's your own agentic IP because you're a unique individual and you basically are cloning yourself through these agents. So you become facts you, 10x you, depending on how good you are at cloning yourself. And as these tools develop, it will be
Yes.
easier to clone yourself and to clone expertise. It would make it's very
Yes.
difficult for other people to go. So, when do you think we're going to start to see agentic modes? I know that Momentum probably already has a mode with its own like agentic layers that are being built,
Yeah.
and as they get
Yeah.
bigger and with this data, they will be more and more advanced, and other people will not be able to replicate this.
Right. I think we need to define what agentic is first, just to make sure we're on the same page with stuff. Because like agents have such this spectrum of what the heck is an AI agent, you know? So when I say agentic, what I'm meaning is something that's taking action and making decisions on its own that I'm not involved with, you know. And those actions are not just it's not a deep research agentic flow. It's like it's executing on things that actually a person would do in the past. Like, and I don't mean deep research. I mean like it's integrating with 10 different tools and doing my calendar. I'll give you an example. If I had some ability for some um, agent to be well trained on me enough to read my emails. And if someone says, hey, I need a meeting with you, it would auto send a meeting thing, schedule the meeting, and make sure it's on my calendar. And then from there, before the meeting happens, sends me a thing 5 minutes before the meeting and says, hey, you have a podcast interview today. Make sure you know these things about this podcast, whatever the case might be. So that my workflow, I'm literally just walking. It's like having an executive assistant plus a brainstorming consultant on all parts of my business that just brings things to me, and I'm just like experiencing my life. Does that make sense? But again, what it's doing is it's coming back to me because what it needs from me is my IP, my uniqueness that only I can do as a human being, right? So that's the world I'm really, really, really looking forward to, of just saying, like, for example, I write a newsletter every Tuesday or Wednesday every week. I have a podcast every week. There's little things that I'm making workflow through that very soon I'll have the ability to automate the entire process. It's not there yet because there's things I still have to tweak because AI is not there yet. But soon there'll be a process where all I have to do is when I do a podcast interview, that as soon as I'm done, I don't even have to go get the file. As soon as it gets done, it will log into Zoom, grab the recording, pull it back out, and all this stuff happens I never touch. All I got to do is talk to the human. That's it. You know what I mean? The
Yeah, it does the
scheduling,
clips, does the blogs
then
afterwards.
then the clips, there's the blog. It'll send you the guest, all the blogs. It'll edit the video for me. It'll make the video beautiful and it's really amazing social media thing. Like all this stuff, and then bring it to you as a user and say thank you so much and blah blah blah, and then send you a gift card. All this stuff. Like that's the world I'm really looking forward to doing, because that's what we could do. Which means that in that world, the thing that will mean more than anything is going to be the genuine connections that humans make, because everything else would be AI. So it's like these conversations like you and I having right now is going to be the valuable and unique experiences that people will pay for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to your point, everything else will be agentic. It's like there's people who believe in a simulation, and they think already the world is agentic, and we just didn't know about that. And then they go like, there's a whole
Right.
subreddit full of that.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
But now we are kind of getting to experience what does that mean firsthand, and as we automate it more, it will become super, super, super agentic. To the point where it's creepy, right? To your points, like you cannot do anything; everything is done for you. But I get joy out of this. Like I'm like you, I'm a
Me too.
nerd. I love to jump into these prompts and to configure things, and when it works, I'm excited because then I don't have to do it.
I know, right? There's a lot of really cool stuff happening that I can't wait to have happen. That either going to be built for us or we'll build it. But I think it's a fun. I'm very positive in my outlook for the future. I know there's like Agenda 27 and all these other things that say like how depressing it's going to be. I'm excited. I'm excited about where things are going.
I'm excited as well. I mean, to me, this is super, super, super interesting times we live in. So, any thoughts you want to leave our listeners with? Anything you want to promote? Anything you want to give to everybody? Do you want people to get in touch with you about anything that you want to partner with people on? Let us know.
Yeah, I made a prompts library with Momentum. So if you go to momentum.io, there is a 200 plus prompt library that I personally wrote every single one of those prompts. Some are advanced. There's some JSON prompts in there. There's some advanced. They're mostly go-to-market. To be fair, they're go-to-market prompts. So if you're not in go-to-market, you may not like them. But there's a list of 200 plus prompts that are all not your normal everyday prompts. That's free. You just got to log in and grab them. So I made my gift.
That sounds amazing. I'll go grab them. I'll definitely go grab them. This because we always do go to market, and I'm always interested in what's out there. And thank you so much for joining the podcast. We'd really love to have you back again someday. We'd be really excited to hear how things have evolved on your end. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Philippe.